Welcome to the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, and today's top secret tip is if you make a mistake, own up to it right away, and your clients are going to be far more forgiving.
Want to learn how to fail the right way? Listen to this episode.
This is the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, where we share top secret tips to help you take your wedding game to the next level.
I'm Annika, and I'm a wedding coordinator, enthusiast, and venue manager for one of the best venues in Idaho.
I'm Chris, and I'm a DJ, master of ceremonies, and all-around lover of weddings.
We're on a mission to improve weddings and wedding professionals everywhere.
Today, we are talking about how to fail the right way. You're going to fail at some point.
Yeah, it's inevitable. You're going to fail.
So let's make sure.
Do it right.
Yeah, let's do it right. Okay. So we want to set the tone as far as what is a failure. We want to make sure that we're defining that. I Googled it. I hate it when people are like, Webster's dictionary I hate that.
Yeah.
But really a failure is a lack of success or an unexpected outcome.
Okay, yeah.
There's also a really cheesy, pithy line that said, first act in learning. F-A-I-L. It's cheesy. But yeah, really an unexpected outcome is a failure. And I think even a positive outcome can still be a failure.
Agreed,
if it wasn't what you were expecting.
Totally.
And I mean, not all failures are big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, most of them are just teeny little failures that you can correct that nobody sees.
Yes.
So let's talk about how to fail the right way. And I think failing the right way means setting yourself up to not fail most of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just failing all the time, and that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how we do that, how we limit that. So limiting your failures. What are some ways, Annika, that you've seen that you've limited your failures?
Yeah. I think for me, the number one piece of advice is you have to prepare. If you are not prepared, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So you have to prepare. You have to be ready for almost any scenario that's going to come your way.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're prepared, and in preparation, I think that includes having processes that make sure that you don't mess up, right?
Yes.
So for us, we have checklists so that we don't forget equipment. I mean, that's an easy way to fail, but also a very easy way to avoid failure. It's just check it off.
I think too, when it comes to preparation, making sure that your team is all on the same page. If you're prepared, that's great. But what happens if you're the only one that's prepared and your other team members have no idea what to do?
That's a great point. Yeah, I agree. Also, I think it's important that we are reviewing and recapping from events, which we talked about in a previous episode. But it's really important that you're reviewing those things to see just the minor weak points.
Yeah, I think with that too, though, it's so important to keep emotions out when you're reviewing.
Yeah, that's hard.
It's hard, but it is so easy. I mean, okay, so for example, this last weekend, we had a little bit of a rough wedding just because of little failures that,
Yeah.
And it's so easy when you're reviewing to be like, oh my goodness, this wedding was so horrible and there were so many things, but it doesn't do you any good. Just keep a rational head, take emotion out, and just say, okay, this happened. This is what we could have done to prevent it. Move on. Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
So
I usually have this pattern. It's an unintentional pattern, but right after the wedding, I'll be mad about something, right? I can't believe this person did that, and I can't believe that this happened. And then a day later, I'll be more rational, and I'll think, okay, maybe they did this because of this reason.
It
was a stupid reason, but maybe that's the reason they did it, right? So I think taking them, it's okay to feel the emotions, but make sure when you're really reviewing for making improvements that you take the emotion out. I didn't think of that. That's a great point.
Well, and I think too, your emotions can escalate things. So it really might not have been a big thing.
Yeah.
And of course, you need to feel that emotion. But when it comes to reviewing, if you keep that emotion in, it's just going to escalate it. You might be like, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
But in reality, it was okay. It all worked out great. And there's no point in lingering.
And you might be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Your emotions can totally fool you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. For example, I was going to share a story, but I'm not going to because it could out somebody. But yeah, I think you got to take your emotions out of it because for all those reasons. Okay. Also limiting your failures. You should be able to learn from others, right?
Yes.
See how other people have failed and just don't do those things. I think that, Randy Bartlett, who's a DJ that I've stolen a lot of great secrets from.
Yeah.
And they're not secrets because he put out like training videos. So
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, he said the other day that he sends a checklist to couples. Well, he doesn't do it anymore because he's retired, but he sends a checklist to couples for like things that you need to think about, things that you need to prepare, all those things. And he said, the way I got that checklist is just seeing what went wrong at weddings and writing them down in a positive way.
Yeah.
So like,
very similar to us when we have our details meeting. We go through a list of questions with our couple, and we have added a lot because we see things that are like, the number one best example I have is who's going to cut and serve cake. Yeah. Because, they cut the cake and then no one is assigned to serve it and it just sits there all night. I think you said you have an album of cakes at the end of the night.
Yeah, I do. Whole cakes, uncut cakes.
Yep. And so with that, we saw that and we took that as an opportunity in our details meetings to say, hey, who will be serving your cake?
I love it.
And if they're always like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then it's like, we can take care of it for you. We just need to know if that's what we're doing.
Oh, what a great added value. Like, here's a problem you didn't think of. We've got the solution. That's so great.
Yep.
I love it.
It's fun.
Some other ways to learn from others is shadow somebody else. Just see what they do correctly. And if you shadow somebody badly or shadow somebody that's not very good, then you can learn from those failures.
I will say when it comes to shadowing, this is like one of my pet peeves. So if you're shadowing, the term shadow is you are their shadow.
Yeah.
You are there to learn. I feel like I get lots of people who come to shadow us and they are like so timid and like way far away. And I'm like, you're not going to learn anything back there.
Jump in.
Come up here, jump in. And if you are shadowing, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're there but not really there and you're watching but not really watching, you're not going to get that much out of it. Yeah. You just gotta dive in.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a good learning opportunity that, I think also going to conferences, reading books, just all of these things will help you avoid some of those failures.
And I think too, they help you maintain. It's easy to be like, oh, well, I know what I'm doing, and you get comfortable and then you get sloppy, but it helps you maintain. The amount of times that I listen to certain books over and over again, and even though I've heard them 5 times, it's like, oh yeah, that's a great point to remember.
Right. So I don't think I've ever implemented everything from something that I've read. Right. There's always something else that I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to be able to, I can implement that now.
Yep.
So another way I think is to interview your clients. We may have talked about this on the recap episode, but interviewing your clients afterwards, 6 months, a year after, to see what their perspective on it was, will help you see that, 1, there may be some things that you can improve, but 2, maybe there are some things that you think are a big deal that they don't care about at all.
Yeah.
And you may think of them as a failure, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Agreed.
Okay. So now we've talked about limiting your failures. Let's talk about what happens when you actually fail. I think number 1, you have to recognize that you've failed in some way.
Yes.
Right? You can't identify there's a problem unless you identify the problem.
I'm not about just making an excuse. If you failed, own it.
Yeah.
And don't just be like, oh, well, I've had a hard day, or I hate excuses. But you need to recognize that you did fail and what you're going to do to fix it.
Yeah. And it's okay to fail. I think there are certain things that it's okay to fail. But when you recognize your failure, I think you need to identify what led to that outcome. You need to identify what led to that. Otherwise, you're going to be making excuses.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you need to be okay at analyzing it further. So more than just oh, well, what led to that? Oh, well, I had a hard day. That's very surface level.
Yeah.
But if you explain, okay, well, I woke up late. What can I do to prevent me from waking up late, and then I was rushed out the door. Okay, so we probably need more time. And, if you can actually dive in, that's going to help you fix it more than just, well, it was a hard day.
Yeah.
So.
And I like to walk through those things. I like to think through that process of like, this is silly, but I mean, I've got my checklist for equipment, but when I'm just about to leave, I look at the equipment and I imagine everything set up. I think, okay, the laptop goes on the stand. The stand has a cable coming out of it for one speaker and another for the other speaker, and the speaker goes on poles so that I can really visualize and make sure that I'm not missing anything. So if you're able to go back through something that you messed up and think, okay, this happened, then this happened, that's where it was.
It's usually like a domino effect.
Yep,
so.
Exactly. So, so then I think, once you've recognized your failure, you've got to figure out where that lies. There are some failures that are blatant and clients can see it. Everybody knows you messed up.
Yeah.
There are others that only you know you messed up, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think you need to be open to things that are out of your control. Yeah. So one example I had is, again, this last Saturday.
Yeah.
It was so hot. It was so hot. And because of that, a lot of our tape was having a hard time sticking.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is so bad. Everything was fine. But right after ceremony, we all go over to the reception area, and you know how we have the lights strung above the dance floor?
Yeah.
They weren't taped correctly, but because of the heat, the tape gave out and they fell.
Oh, shoot.
No one was under it, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But so we're looking at that, we're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But again, trying to not be too dramatic or anything. But everyone was so understanding because they're like, oh, the tape must have just gave out. It's so hot.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, just remembering things might not seem as big of a deal to what you think is a big deal.
Yeah. And we didn't have this written down, but a side note, I love the phrase that it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it. Right.
Yep.
So it's okay if things go wrong as long as you fix it. So I think for those things where clients can see that something is messed up, I think it's really important to just own it before they even say anything.
Exactly. I agree.
There was a final call that I had with a couple the other day for their wedding, and I realized there was an email that I didn't respond to. So right out the gate, almost as soon as the phone call started, I said, guys, I need to apologize.
Yeah.
Before we get into anything, I just noticed there's this email that I didn't reply to, and I am so sorry about that.
Yeah.
And because of that, they were like, oh, it's cool. It's all right. I'm sure you have a lot of weddings. I'm like, yeah, but yours is important. Right.
Right.
So,
but if you just swept that under the rug, that's
right.
You got to own it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, admitting your failure, there's a small caveat here. There may be some possible legal exceptions. Mm-hmm. If somebody falls and gets hurt,
yes,
and there's liability issues, take care of the problem. But I'm not a legal expert, but there may be some situations where you should not just say, oh, that's totally our fault. We totally messed up on that.
That's very true. That's actually a really good point, So definitely, if it's not anything crazy, own your mistakes, but if it's anything that can be legal, then be careful.
Consult your lawyer.
Consult your lawyer.
And then, if needed, you should make it right with the client.
Yes.
In any way that you can. But also be careful not to give away too much when you do that. I think sometimes when we make a mistake, we're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to refund your entire wedding. I don't know who does that. But we go overboard when sometimes it's just an apology would suffice.
Right. A lot of times just an apology would work. Even if you can offer little things, I'm not sure. It's really easy for us as a venue to just add things on.
Yeah.
So for example, this past Saturday, because of those little things, they were spending the night, and it was so easy for us to say oh, you guys are more than welcome to have a late checkout.
Easy.
Super easy. There's nothing going on the next day. But it still makes them feel very valued.
Yeah.
And it's not us giving away too much.
Yeah.
So,
So that, you might make a list of those kinds of things that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's if clients are able to see it, if they recognize it, or they might be able to recognize it. On the flip side, if it's something that a client is not going to even see or understand, or if the client doesn't know, don't point it out.
Exactly.
Like, don't throw yourself under the bus when they didn't even know there's a bus, right? Just
There's lots of times where you might be making a mistake, but they don't even see it. And so take it as a learning opportunity, train from it, but don't throw yourself under the bus.
Right. Yep, exactly. Same with, just your confidence in that moment. Just be confident and move forward. There are so many times that as an MC, I don't say the exact right thing. I don't say the thing I planned on. Nobody knows. So you just act confident, move forward, and it may be a failure, but you don't have to look like a failure.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think too, just going back to our light example, how different would that have been if when they fell, we were like, oh my gosh, like what do we do? What do we do? Oh, that was so bad. Like that's going to give off a totally different vibe of like, oh, that was a mistake. Right. Versus just like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. We'll get that fixed right away. You just, if you have that confidence, it's not going to appear like a mistake.
Yep.
So
I agree. I love that. So then I think you need to make sure that you are finding ways to avoid that in the future.
Yeah.
This is where your processes come in. This is how sometimes you create processes, because you've seen what doesn't work and you fix it. Either it could be new processes, could be new equipment, it could be more training for you or for your team. I think, if you're not doing that, you're just going to do the same thing over again.
I think it's important whenever you do fail there needs to be a to-do that comes from that. So whether that is, okay, well, this happened and we need to train how to tape our lights up better, or we need to get this new equipment or whatever. There should be a to-do from every failure.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's so awesome. I think in the end, you just need to be able to look at it from a new perspective and see what that situation would look like without that failure and how you get to that point. Because you're going to fail. It's okay. People understand. One of the trainings that I did with a guy called Mark Farrell, he said we were talking about love stories, when you're presenting love stories, the crowd, the audience, they're on your side. They want you to succeed.
Yeah.
They don't want the guy making announcements to fail.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so remember that. If you mess up, go at it again. And they'll be behind you.
Yeah.
Unless you're really annoying, then maybe they want to see you fail. But just as long as you're willing to learn from it and move forward, then I think it's okay to fail.
I think so too. Well, and I think also it's okay. Some failures are funny and they add to the day.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so, like, for example, this last Saturday, the officiant started the ceremony without the bride. And, like, depending on your attitude, that could have been like a, what? But everyone, like, it was just so funny. And it was like, oh, we should probably wait for the bride. Oh, ha, ha. Like, and it kind of just added to the day and it added some humor. So I think, everybody there, they have your back. They want you to succeed. It's okay. Just start over and you're good.
Yeah, it's how you frame it for people.
Exactly.
And it's like a little kid. If you instantly say, oh my goodness, are you okay, when they get hurt, they're going to cry, right? But if you laugh it off with them, then they laugh it off too, as long as it's not serious.
Yeah.
And I think if we're framing it in the proper light, not making excuses, but framing it in the proper light, then people are going to go with you and they're going to understand. People knew it was hot. They knew the lights were, it's okay.
Right.
Things happen.
But
you made it right, didn't make excuses, and now you can figure out how to make those lights not fall in the future.
Exactly.
Right? So,
yep. There's a to-do now. So
hopefully you've learned a few things. We try and learn after every wedding. We always try and learn what we could do better, how we could fail less.
Yeah.
I don't like to be a constant failure, so we like to fail less, right? So we wish you all the best in your future weddings, and I hope you can find some things that you fail at and learn from them.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
See ya. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Top Secret Wedding Podcast.
Subscribe, rate, and review us, and we'll see you next time.